What if true strength isn't about pushing through the pain, but learning to feel it? Join us as we explore the surprising intersection of masculinity, vulnerability, and emotional regulation, and how nervous system healing may be the missing link in your health and success story. Welcome back to Happiness on Tap, where we pour our stories of joy, resilience, and hope, one inspiring guest at a time. Your go-to podcast for uplifting conversations that stir the heart and ignite the spirit. I'm your host, Leanne, and today we are diving into a conversation that is as transformative as it is necessary. I am thrilled to welcome Mitch Webb, a leading nervous system and holistic health coach who helps people heal from the inside out by addressing the root cause of dis-ease, unresolved trauma, and nervous system dysregulation. Mitch's personal journey is powerful, one shaped by childhood trauma, a near-death experience, and chronic stress that left him physically and emotionally drained. But through his pain, he discovered a path to healing that blends ancient wisdom with cutting-edge science. In this episode, we'll explore the evolving role of masculinity, why vulnerability is a superpower, and how emotional regulation isn't just about mental health. It's essential for physical healing and lasting success. Whether you're someone pushing through burnout or simply curious about how your nervous system affects every area of your life, this episode is packed with insight you won't want to miss. Mitch, thank you so much for joining me. I'm so excited for this conversation.
Leanne, thank you so much for having me. I hope I can live up to the introduction. That was pretty awesome.
I have no doubt. I have no doubt. Your story is powerful, and I'm excited to hear all about it and for you to share it with my listeners.
Absolutely, let's do it.
So, can you take us through your personal healing journey from the trauma and health struggles you faced, kind of to the work you do now, and share what role vulnerability played in that transformation?
Yeah, let me write that down. Because I'm going to take you on a little bit of a ride here, and then we're going to circle back to vulnerability and connect some dots. So, yeah, thank you for the opportunity to share. This is like a 20-year journey at this point. When I was 20 years old, I'm 39 now. I was traveling abroad for school. I was in Europe, and I fell out of a second story window and had a pretty nasty traumatic brain injury. And you know, it's interesting how if we have trauma, um, someone can get an accident. Two people can get an accident. One person that has trauma, one person that doesn't, and the outcome can look very different. And this, we can even say this is a fender bender, right? This is someone that just gets hit. One person walks away, they're completely fine. The other person walks away and I see like an iceberg as I'm describing this, right? Their underlying dysregulated nervous system comes to the surface in the form of symptoms. And for me, that looked like anxiety and panic attacks and insomnia. And so I spent the next several years, and that's not the only thing. I spent the next several years trying to understand this. And so what that looked like from there is about 6 months later, broke out in psoriasis, so autoimmune disease, all over my body. Didn't know what that was. Went to the doctor. Had the anxiety, had the skin stuff, and I leave with medications and immune suppressants. And I think they have their place, and I'm here to knock either one. And if you need medication, use it. Big fan of resources. And, so I went about my way. Those things kind of helped for a while. And then after school, I moved into a house that had black mold in it. I developed Lyme disease. And it's hard to say which there what came first, the chicken or the egg? But knowing my history of living, being a country boy, living in the woods, being bit by ticks my whole life, it was really the moldy environment. So there's some more trauma that suppressed my immune system and caused uh, this Lyme disease to come out. And so that looked like, really bad brain fog. I would get lost driving in my hometown, would have really bad body aches, just really dysregulate, like anxieties, more insomnia stuff. Um, so eventually, oh, and at the time I was working with my family in sales and in the corporate world, and so there's just like I would just see this bucket of stress that is just piling up, and that's how it is. It's not like it's this one thing. It's the accumulation. It's like being in a boat and not dumping the water out. We're just accumulating because we don't have the skills or the knowledge of what even's going on. So what do? We suppress, we medicate, we avoid. Um, and so, luckily I found a functional medicine doctor at that time, Dr. Dan Pompa. He's pretty well known. We did some heavy metal detox. We detoxed the Lyme, the mold. I had diabetes or borderline diabetes at the time, and we reversed that with fasting and some more detox, the ketogenic diet. And so, that's when I kind of fell in love with health and wellness and was really helping people in similar like metabolic issues and detoxing and really dialing in a nutritional plan because a lot of times we're going to have gut issues with things like that. And so that I fell in love with health and wellness. I left the corporate world, was super excited to be working with people, and was moved to a bigger city to meet some more like-minded people. And when going to see one of my first clients got hit by a dump truck. And so it, yeah, it totaled my car and killed my dog and left me with post-concussion syndrome for about a year. And so I couldn't sleep, I couldn't get out of bed. And now it's pointing. I always was looking like, what is wrong with me? What's going on here? And well, I'll get to that. I learned that after two more. So actually, basically, I learned that soon. I'm getting there, and now this accident is probably 5 or 6 years ago to the present day, and so I get better. That year I get back in the gym, and I remember working out for the first time and being in the sauna, and this guy is like hawking up a lung, and it's 2020, and so then I get COVID. And COVID wasn't such a big deal for me. It was the long haul. I got long haul COVID.
Mhm.
And so that's really a testament to how much stress was in my bucket. Um, and so, went through some dark night. That happened for me for 3 years in a row. So 3 years in a row, I had long haul COVID. My gut, I went down, I'm 195 pounds. I went down to 140 pounds. I couldn't eat. My gut was really just like tight, and we tried everything. I threw hormones at it. I was on thyroid. I was on thyroid because I had lowered my carbohydrates so long, for too long in an active body. Um, Eventually got off of that. I am on testosterone replacement, and I think that's a huge help for the traumatic brain injuries that I've had. But ultimately, the turning point came, and it does connect to vulnerability. It came when we started this men's group here in the Raleigh, North Carolina area called Men on a Journey, and I'm facilitating that now. And this is so funny. This is how far I've come. At the time, I thought mental health issues were a result of nutritional deficiencies, right? And so I thought I'm gonna help these poor bastards with mental health and issues and teach them how to eat, and that's how disconnected I was from like the mental, not mental, but the emotional world. And I was reading the book, The Body Keeps the Score. I went right past the childhood trauma part. That was like embarrassing for me to consider that I had a bad childhood. My parents were well off. They paid for college. They put a roof over their hit my head. They fed me, and I was embarrassed to look at the. It was basically lack of attunement. In the modern world, um, we have priorities, and we have a lot of trauma on our own, and we're go 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 all the time, and there's just not time to attune to a little one if we don't even know what that looks like. And so kind of rewinding, that's why that car accident or the falling out of the window was so impactful. And how someone who has a regulated nervous system, safety that was really embedded as a child, authenticity, freedom of expression, all those things. So if I have an underlying dysregulated nervous system and I have this big traumatic event, it's kind of the straw that breaks the camel's back. And so, I'm in this men's group, and I start sharing some stories, and somebody asked me, like, it's something about my dad, and we were working together, and my response is like, I want to kick his ass or something like that. And I thought that was like cool. I thought I was being a tough guy, and and that wasn't taken the way, it wasn't funny to anybody, and luckily. And so one of them pulled me aside at the end. They're like, "Hey, man, the way you're describing the situation. That's trauma. You're reading the book, The Body Keeps the Score. Like you're the guy in the book." And I was like, "What?" And so that little bit of vulnerability opened a door for me to get in to see my first therapist. And I'm coming in there trying to figure out what's wrong with me, like what's going on here. And I had a lot of trauma to show. I wasn't aware of the childhood stuff. And she's like, later down the road, she's like, "Yeah, it just didn't add up. I was looking for what's wrong, and what was wrong was this dysregulated nervous system, this language of safety that I had never experienced in my life." And so, um, yeah, found my way to Irene Lyon and her work. She's my mentor now. I've been doing that for a year. After a month or 3 months or something like that of doing the work, I started eating food again. I could eat 3 meals a day, didn't have the food sensitivity, started exercising again. Um, Certainly still have things that I'm working on with activation, anxiety, insomnia, and even like fatigue happens, like kind of we were talking about before. When we've been on that treadmill, that survival, fight or flight our whole life, stepping off of that and feeling the exhaustion is part of the game, and so ultimately being vulnerable and saying what was going on with me in some safe places around some safe people, that it was a container and that could support those big emotions that I had, and saw that I'm not alone. This is common. I think everybody going through life is going to have some form of trauma, and seeing the benefits, and some are slow and some are quick, and ultimately realizing that there's nothing wrong with me, and I can quit looking for that, and finding the solution, the community, the mentorship, and the guidance. It takes a village, and I got lucky enough to be supported by some of the best in the industry, and really feel passionate about helping other people find their way back to safety, back to feeling their best.
Man, I love it. Like I have a whole page of notes
Yeah.
because I think, definitely for myself, but I think for others, once people listen to your story, they are really going to see like they've had these things, but didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
definitely the case for me. You mentioned, psoriasis and going to the doctor and saying, "Well, God, I'm having anxiety and insomnia," and they just looked past everything. I had the same thing. I had 3 months of chronic hives.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
couldn't figure out where they were coming from. They sent me to an allergist, then they sent me to a rheumatologist, and they kept sending me to all these doctors, and everybody was like, well, we don't know what's causing it. Have you changed anything? I'm like, no, I'm the most routine person you will ever meet. I don't change anything. I don't change my soap, my shampoo, I don't change much. Um, and it was myself is who figured out that it was stress. I
Yeah, and
was in
that's
chronic stress with some crazy stuff going on with my son who was in Boy Scouts and we found out that his Boy Scout leader was embezzling money. And then my daughter at that time also turned 18 and decided to jump ship and think she knew it all and disappeared to another state at the exact same time. So my body just, everything was coming out. But no doctor ever once asked me what my stress level was.
well, it's so interesting that we start with talking about symptoms. And man, I'll tell you what, when you start getting into this work and you start reorganizing the home that you built your life on, and you're pulling the ground floor out, and installing new structure, lots of symptoms can pop up, and they can be terrifying. And I don't know if you experience this, but a lot of people get worse before they get better, and we think that we're going backwards. And even as we're sitting here and talking about that, I can feel a flash in my body as that happens. And so, um, two things here is that the symptom, chasing the symptoms, is like playing whack-a-mole, and it's necessary to feel some level of control, and through fake control or fake safety through control, to try to symptom manage, but something else is going to pop up. And so instead, what we really want to focus on is safety through self-trust. Because if we continue, and I keep getting lessons on this happened to me earlier this year where I went back into a pattern of trying to fix and try to figure out what's wrong. And I'm supplementing and I'm going to the doctor. And, it's just like yourself. I had two or three big stressful moments. And when I was finally able to zoom out, I think in our setbacks is where we learn the most. And I was able to see, like, oh, my body got resensitized. Makes perfect sense. And I think the thing that keeps us in the loop the most is the fear of the fear. So it's this lady that I really like. Her name is Dr. Claire Weeks, I believe. She's really old author, definitely like 30s, 40s, 50s. No, wait, no, she's writing books in the 60s. But she calls it, we have the initial fear, and then we have, the dysregulation that comes from that. And so then the symptoms come from that. And so this is the old events already happened. My symptoms are going off. So now we become afraid of the symptoms, and that keeps us stuck in the loop. And if you are fearful and have symptoms and you start going and seeing people in the health industry, I don't care if it's your doctor, your chiropractor, your massage therapist, your acupuncturist, whatever, everybody's got a solution for you, and they're going to go after those symptoms. And so now you're just trying to manage all this stuff, and here comes perfectionism, and here comes black or white thinking, all or nothing. And if you're like me, you're going to force it, you're going to go really hard. And that's what got us into this situation. And so we have to recognize that what the fear is doing, that it's going to be there, that it's just a thought. And then we got to titrate and go slow and start to kind of unwind this mess that has accumulated over decades, over a couple months, or whatever it may be.
Absolutely. I had a friend who ended up uprooting her entire family and leaving the US and moving to Portugal because she had spent a lifetime chasing the symptoms.
Yeah. You're avoiding it. You just want to get away from it. And I see that in myself. So I completely understand that. And it's like we don't want to push that away. We want to recognize that pattern and see, what does it want? What's going on here? And that's where we can get under and deeper and deeper and deeper. We can get deeper into that wound of, why do we feel like we need to run away? What have we been running away from?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the truth for sure. and developing, these tools in our toolbox that now when we start to go into that circle again or start to feel like we need to go and see all these doctors, we can realize more quickly, I guess, that we do have the tools. We do have other people that we can talk to that can help us, maybe remind us of the tools if we're not thinking about them. I do my hypnotherapist, when I started working with her was when she was still getting certified as a hypnotherapist, but she was an herbalist. And so she took me back to the beginning because she was the first person I met when I was in trauma response and had just quit my job that brought me in and said, let's work on calming your nervous system first. So she had mixed me up some teas. I started drinking those teas. And sure enough, it started calming my nervous system. I didn't feel like I was on fire or afraid to leave my house or, nauseous all the time or not sleeping. Like it really helped calm my nervous system. And then I started working with other practitioners because my doctor just wanted to keep giving me a prescription for an antidepressant and didn't want to spend the time talking to me about my symptoms and was only looking at my medical records that had, listed that I had been in a abusive marriage 10 years ago. Like I left that marriage. I'm in a good marriage now, but my medical record still said that I was in an abusive marriage. So she wrote me
you in a box.
Yeah, exactly. I was 100% in a box. And so I was just like, you know what? I'm out. I got to find somebody else. I will only go to a medical doctor for the things I have to, my annual exams and those kind of stuff. Otherwise, I work with alternative medicine practitioners.
Yes. And something that you said that I want to highlight and celebrate is what you're describing here is, you were relying on external, and eventually you got to a place where you said, you guys got to get out of here. I'm going to trust this. And that so much of my journey is that, and that's what I teach, is when we have trauma, we disconnect. Usually what's below the neck feels so intense and terrorizing to us that we don't want to be there. So we squeeze ourselves up into our head and we try to think our way to safety. And now we're outsourcing our wellness to external resources, which that is, I'm not saying that that's wrong. It makes sense. It's maybe that's where we start, especially when we feel like we're out of control. That feels like control. But ultimately, healing does not come from out here. Nobody's coming to save you. Nobody can help you at the way that you can. And so that's what we teach is how can we reconnect this. This will get you in trouble. The gut down in here, the heart, that we want to be in the body. We've just disconnected from it. And when we can reconnect with the body very slowly, very intentionally, it starts to give us these layups and these aha moments and the things that we've suppressed, the emotions, the sensations, they come out, boom, and they're coming out because we feel safe, right? We're not in that like chronic functional freeze state where we're numbed out and because there's a constant threat. Now we feel safe. Body starts giving us more, and we start following our own impulse to, you know what, I don't want to see that doctor. I don't want to take that medication anymore. I'm going to do these things. That's the healing. That's the rope, and that's working with good people. That's what they're going to support is your voice, your intuition. That's a journey in itself to do that. So I can't highlight that enough that you did your own thing. That's how this work works is we listen to our voice with a lot of good support.
Yep. And I found that for myself, kind of trial and error. I had been in that fight, flight, freeze, anxiety state for so long that once I had time to rely on the people who knew what they were talking about, like I work with a lady who her thing is called the biology of trauma. So just understanding what my body was doing.
Oh, yeah.
And I also learned like how to replace my vocabulary. When I was in brain fog, that was one thing like I felt was missing, was my vocabulary and my ability to express what was going on in my body, because it was just like this heavy cloud, and I felt like I was flipping through blank Rolodex cards trying to find the words to say this is what I'm going through.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started relearning, replacing my vocabulary, and I'm like, oh, okay, now I can say what's going on.
Describe that to me, Leanne. What do you mean by replacing your vocabulary? What does that look like?
The funny thing is, and this was, like I said, 2020, 2021, I found Brene Brown.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so the book that she had put out at that time was called Atlas of the Heart, which was like, she had researched all these people and was trying to find the definition of shame. And she ended up with 86 words, 86 feelings, emotions, whatever, that all kind of defined shame. And so it was, to me, it was like a dictionary, like an A to Z of words. And so I started reading this book, and one word at a time, it started making sense. I was like, oh, anguish. I know anguish. I have felt anguish deep in my soul. But I always called it, abandonment or betrayal, and those are definitions also. But the anguish was the deep, deep feeling. It was that curled up on the floor, crying so hard. I felt like I was crying my heart out of my chest.
Mm-hmm.
So I used that book to replace my vocabulary, where like I said, my brain fog was just so thick, like even the word abandonment wouldn't come up. Like I couldn't remember people I had worked with for 10 years. I could remember their face, but I couldn't remember their name. Couldn't remember where we had worked with together. It was just like this big fog. And I, like you said, whack-a-mole, for me, I felt like I was an Etch-a-Sketch. I'd wake up every day and felt like somebody had just shook me and my memories were gone.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Do you remember a lot from that time period? Just curious.
The trauma that I was experiencing,
When you were like in it, do you have a lot of memories from in that stressful period?
I do, because like I said, it was before I enrolled to get my certification. I had just quit my job. I was learning about healing, and everybody always promotes journaling. Journaling is this great way to write down what you're feeling, what you're thinking. My problem was my brain fog was so bad that I could write it down and not be able to find it again. Which notebook was it in? Where did I put it? And then flipping through pages felt like I was chasing something.
Yep.
And so I went to my
Something
husband.
was chasing you
Oh, God, yes.
because we're in fight or flight,
Mm-hmm. I went to my husband, and, the journaling thing actually goes back to my childhood, part of my childhood trauma. My parents had eventually got divorced, but they were both cheating on each other. And we were young. And because there was no trust in their relationship, there was no trust in the house. So
makes so much sense.
everything rolls downhill. So they didn't trust us. And they were afraid that because I was this girl in middle school and the big thing was writing notes to your friend, that if I was writing notes, that meant I was telling somebody the secrets that were happening in our house.
Wow.
And my mom was so afraid that not only would a friend see it, but a friend's parent would see it, or a teacher would grab the note, or, somebody from the church would find out. So I couldn't keep a diary. I couldn't bring home notes. I was searched every day before I went to school.
Wow.
She was so afraid that somebody would know my secrets. So when I'm in trauma response and I'm trying to learn how to journal, the concept of pen to paper was physically painful for me. Like writing down what I was thinking hurt because I was still in that fear that I was going to get searched, even though, I'm in my 40s and married.
This journaling exercise is when you were an adult and you're trying to do it and you're feeling that makes so much sense. I get it. Yeah.
Yep.
So that little part is now coming up. I always say trauma is a younger version of us that we've slammed slammed the door on and closed the door it's rainy outside and it's cold and it keeps coming back and knocking and we keep slamming the door. And when we feel safe enough, we start showing our body that we're going to show up for it, then it starts giving us more, and our job is to turn towards that. And so it sounds like a younger part was coming up to you, giving you the opportunity of healing, and luckily you were able to lean into that instead of pushing it away. I think that's so much of the work.
Yeah. And I still really struggled, like I said, with the pen to paper, or I'd write it down and then I couldn't remember where I had put it. So I went to my husband and said, one thing I know for a certain from working in an office for my entire life is the value of search on a computer. I said, I need a laptop so that I can type my thoughts, because I could type till the cows come home. I just couldn't write with a pen. And I said, and if I can't find it, I can always use search, and search is going to find a word. And that's where it started. Got a laptop, used it to start journaling, used it to start writing down my daily wins, or writing down my daily feelings or emotions or whatever I was doing. Writing down my wins, like that was something that I fell in love with, celebrating every day that I was getting stronger. I was, replacing things or learning new things, learning new ways to heal. All of it was just like this huge win for me. I was so excited about it. And then I took the time to just kind of close myself off for a week, and I wrote my entire story, typed it up, just kept typing until I couldn't type no more. And that was the greatest healing I think I was ever able to do and feel control of, without worrying about repercussions. Like, oh, if I write this in a book, what if it gets back to my mom, who comes after me? Or what if my boss now sees that I wrote down what he did to me that made me to the point where I had to leave my job. Then he comes back and sues me because, of course, he's a lawyer. And you know what? I was like, you know what? If you don't want people talking about you, be a better person, because this is my story to share.
Yeah. Amen. Hell yeah. I love that.
And it was very empowering for me just to get it all out. And, over time, like I said, my confidence started getting better. The marriage that I'm in, I had just gotten married in 2019 after getting out of a 20-year abusive marriage. So for the first time in my life, really, I felt safe. I felt loved and cherished and safe. And I was just able to, have somebody that supported me in my decision to quit my job, to get the help that I needed, to change careers. I mean, everything, there was support at every level.
Wow. I wrote, it almost makes me emotional. You don't like it, be better. This is my story. I love that. And the one thing too, I want to circle back to with the memory. That's something that is very common with people who've experienced a lot of trauma, especially in childhood, is we don't remember our childhood because the brain or the nervous system is in, fight or flight, in survival mode. And so it's like the child doesn't get to experience childhood. They're trying to, think their way to safety or avoid or walk on eggshells or do whatever. And so that's how my childhood, there's little bitty points and things like that, but it's not like, this huge memory. So
Yeah,
yeah.
no. And in comparison to my husband that can remember, like his memories are all good memories. I don't have good memories. I have the bad memories. Like,
Yeah, because you were fighting for your life, and so it's like I remember vacations and different things. It's like, oh yeah, I felt like shit on that vacation or whatever it may be. And
yep,
I mean, that's what neuroplasticity is. I mean, we're rewiring our brain to look for safety, to look for the wins. I really like that. I wrote that one down in your journaling. It's like, yeah, but our brain wants to heal and is ready and made to heal. The whole thing about like once you hit 30 years old, you're not going to change or whatever, like that's insanity. I mean, that's some BS that we get sold. And all these things you're talking about are the juice that creates neuroplasticity and the opportunity to create new connections in the brain. And I love you're like, man, I finally felt safe in my body. Like God Almighty, that's like a lifetime achievement award right there.
it is. And it helped when I started having some trauma triggers like that first year. My first like 2021, 2022 was right through COVID. Um, so I had like fear of leaving the house. Everybody was in masks. I thought I had an opportunity to go to work at this coffee house that I absolutely love, favorite coffee house in all the town. But when they told me I was going to have to be there at 5 a.m. alone, and people were going to be coming in masks, I couldn't even apply. Like that fear was so insane. I could go to work downtown at 3 o'clock in the morning by myself and never had fear. All of a sudden, I have fear that's so crippling. I can't go to the bank. I can't get gas. I can't apply for jobs. Damn, trauma is a monster. It came back just furious.
So you had at that time, you had already done some work, felt good enough to, excuse me, go back to work. And as you tried or attempted to, this massive fear came up. So how did you work with that?
Um, a lot of it was that I learned, like I said, I had these tools in my toolbox. And so I was able to ask myself that magic question, like, is the fear that I'm experiencing right now, is it real?
Hmm.
Or is it just that brain or that part in my gut that is telling me that somebody's going to come in and rob the bank while I'm in there?
Yeah.
Or I'm going to be making a cup of coffee and somebody's going to come in and I'm going to be alone and something bad's going to happen. Like, I suppose it could happen, but everything can happen. But am
Mhm.
I going to let it continue to paralyze me from moving forward? So I would
Yep.
just take time and say, is what I'm feeling, is this real?
Is there a threat right now? I'll tell my clients, do you see a tiger in your room?
Yep. My big thing was my ex-husband. My last couple of times with him was one of it was him chasing me through my front yard with a sledgehammer. So then I didn't see him again for a year. And I had just opened my office for coaching and I pulled into my parking lot and his truck was in the parking lot. And I was like, oh my God, he found me. I'd been hiding. I'd been doing pretty good. I'd been hiding. I didn't, but I was like, you know what? I need to work. And my name is on the window. I thought, okay, he found me. And I stayed in my car and I drove home and I locked the door and came in the house and sat down on the couch. And it was like I was in anticipation of an anxiety attack or a panic attack. So I just sat there and just kept saying, is this real? Is he knocking on my door? Did he follow me? Was he there for me or was he there for any of the number of other businesses? Because it was like a 3-story office space. I was like, he could have been there to renew his car title.
Hmm.
Had nothing to do with me. And he wouldn't
Right.
have even seen my office because we're not even on the same floor. So just walking myself through Is this real right now? Is this happening right now? Is he beating on my door? And I'm like, no, I'm
Yeah.
okay. I'm here. I'm in my home. I'm in my safe space. Like more than anything, I was 100% in my safe space. And it never happened. I never had the anxiety attack. I never had the panic attack. I gave myself a little bit of time and then I went, you know what? I got work to do. I went right back to work. His truck was gone.
Hell yeah. That's amazing. I love that. That's such a great story. I appreciate you sharing that. And I think that's why education is so important when it comes to this work. As you were saying that story, there's like a saying, if it's hysterical, it's historical. And so that's like looking around the room, is this really happening right now? Can I 100% without a doubt say this is true? And so one of the things I like and have been playing around with is like putting my worries on a piece of paper and designating a time to do that. And that's what it is. It's putting it all out there, looking at, is it rational? Is it not? What am I doing? What are my behaviors? What are my emotions, thoughts, feelings as I'm thinking about these worries? And then what are they? And are they rational? Are they not? What are my options here? Can I problem solve this? And then like, what's the worst possible thing and how would I deal with that? And then the cool thing is after a week you come back and you see that so many of these worries are not real, just like you're talking about. And it sounds like that's what you were doing, is just showing it to yourself because you were educated, you knew how the nervous system worked, how trauma and stress works. So you have education, you have a higher brain now that can say, hey, that can really go into that observer mode instead of being so zoomed up on it. If we can kind of get back here and look at it and analyze it, and we realize like, oh, this isn't that big of a deal, and feel that safety. I'm in my safe place. He's not here. So you're like, we're using top down there and we're using a little bit of bottom up, and I think
Mm-hmm.
that's a beautiful story of overcoming. And now, was that the last time you had anxiety or thought expected it?
Probably one of less than 3 times,
Yeah.
but they
And how
were
did
all
that feel?
expectation that didn't turn out to be what it could have been or what I thought it was.
Yeah. How's it feel to move through that and see that in your rear view instead of
Oh, so powerful.
half of you?
So powerful. It's that control. Like I've taken my control back to where I was so busy uh, giving that control away or fearing it or whatever. Like I took it back. This is
Mm.
this is mine to take back. And remembering that we do have that power. Even just knowing we have the power to heal.
Oh yeah, we do it ourselves. Our bodies are healing machines if we just let it do that. Now that's easier said than done. Sometimes it can feel like a needle in the haystack, and that's why we're here on this podcast talking about the things that helped us. Like I think the nervous system and the trauma work and mental health is so. Um, luckily it's everywhere now. I don't know if that's just me, but it's pretty cool to see people getting excited about that instead of chasing the symptoms like we were talking about earlier and thinking something's wrong with you. Um, it does feel like that, but once you find your people and try some things that work and you get a win or two, man, it's like you said, it's powerful.
It is absolutely. And I agree. Just hearing more about it, like you and I were talking before we started recording, I'm going to go back to like what it is you do and who you want to help, which is men. Seeing more and more men saying, this is what I believe or used to believe, and that's a big thing that we work with people is the difference between maybe what we believe, think, feel, and our identity. Are they truly what we think, feel, believe in our identity, or were they things that were handed down to us from generation to
Oh, yeah,
generation?
yeah. Is this
Uh,
really me?
and so, knowing that for men, no different for men or women, but that it's okay to be vulnerable, that it's okay to ask for help, that it's okay to share your story, I think is the biggest gift that we can give to anyone.
Mm-hmm. Amen.
And so for you, if you could talk like about, masculinity and stoicism and toughness, and how do you define healthy masculinity today? How are you going to help more men see the possibility?
Um, that's a good question. I think my definition of masculinity continues to include more things and broaden as I, heal and move forward and have those experiences with men. The typical guy gets the message early on that, suck it up, buttercup, don't be a bitch and you got to be tough for everyone. And that's a lot to carry and to push down. It takes a lot of efforting to avoid that and to push and overriding, which is just avoiding the body's needs to rest, to say no, to set a boundary, whatever that may be. And we just get taught like one way of being, like you got to be tough and you can have these emotions. You can have anger and you can have rage, maybe. You got two different flavors of emotions, and the rest of these are not allowed. You're not allowed to be vulnerable and have fear and all the human emotions. Like it's saying, hey, yeah, you're a human, but you have to. These two emotions. Like I got my emotion wheel right here, right? Like these are the emotions.
I got mine too.
You know, there we go. We're
That's great. Mine's just on a piece of paper.
Yeah, yeah. So it's like, and so, when I came to this work, I had so much, I think two types of people, and they can be mixed. You got the people that feel too much, that everything is overwhelming, and then you got people that don't feel anything. And I think that's so much of guys and that's more of the functional freeze. We've got our window of tolerance there where we feel flexible and creative and in our body. And then we go out in high activation. And if we've stayed in an environment, conscious or subconscious, that's been a threat for too long, what is that? The high tone dorsal of the parasympathetic. It's going to come on. It's like a clamp. It's going to shut things down, and you might go like you're going to shut down, and so you're not going to feel that intensity anymore. And some of us, when that environment is prolonged, we learn to love that, and we create a new, false window of safety that is below the window of tolerance that is in shutdown, and so that freeze gets into the system, and that's how we get sick. That's how, and if we learn to shut down, the nervous system touches all these different systems, the hormonal, the immune system, and the gut, the brain, and these systems don't have flow in them, so they're shutting down, and that's what autoimmune is, and that's what chronic gut issues is, or on the other end of that, being too activated, that's anxiety and insomnia and all these things. And so we continue to suck it up and stuff it down, and we end up blowing up on our people that we love, and we're miserable inside, and we can't tell anybody. Guys are struggling in silence. Every human that I've met goes through something, and you just get this like, "How you doing, man? Good, good, good. I'm fine." And then the the options for healing when it comes to guys, like you can work out, you can go to the gym, you can eat mushrooms, you can um, self-medicate with whatever, you can get an ice bath. And that's your options. And so those things are what I did, and I overrode and pushed through and efforted my way into a black hole of fatigue and burnout, and did all the biohacks, all the things, and it looks sexy on paper these days. And getting in that ice bath and putting it on social media looks pretty cool, but it ain't gonna heal you. You
Nope.
know, you don't. For me, it was like another detox, another supplement, a more restricted diet, a harder workout. I mean, ended up, I used to tell people like, and I meant it, and I believed it, that if you're stressed, you got to hit it with more stress. So that's overriding at a very high level. And my rest days look like from 2 a day CrossFit workouts looked like an hour and a half of hot yoga and a cold bath afterwards. And what am I doing there? I'm stimulating the shit out of myself. And then I'm throwing myself into an ice bath to bring on that freeze response to numb out the high activation and the adrenaline that I was running on. And the reason I kept doing it is because it felt familiar. That's what I was used to, and then the body breaks down and you feel like, there goes your strength, there goes your capacity, there goes your ability to enjoy things. And the things that I was doing to ultimately punish myself, they're not working. And so it takes a lot of vulnerability to say, hey, I'm not okay, man. And just start. But trauma is like farts, right? Like if you hold them in, it hurts, and if you let them out too quick, it'll clear a room. So, you got you got to titrate and go slow. I think I wanted the big cathartic stuff. I wanted to go after it because that's what my life was, and then I found my true window of tolerance that was like razor thin, and those things were hurting me. And so now I go really slow. I focus on the basics. I do little bits of work and focus on safety, and that's what I do with my clients. And so I guess going back to the definition of a man, it's realizing that you're a human, not a robot, and reaching out for help. In the group too, in Irene's group, it's me and 30, 40 women. There's two other guys, and I was shutting down after every call because there was just early developmental stuff within relationship that was coming up, and I would feel things where I wanted to say no, I don't want to do this today, or this makes me uncomfortable, or like, and I was just sitting there just like white knuckling it, and
Mhm.
eventually I said to the ladies, really, and to everybody, but hey, I don't like this, I'm feeling these things, and they're like, oh yeah, us too, and offered support that I'd never had. I'd been doing it myself. And so that vulnerability led to more ease in my system because now I feel seen, I feel supported. I'm allowed to have the big emotions that weren't allowed when I was a kid. I'm not going to get ridiculed or punished for that. I'm going to get celebrated for that. And that's such a shift from when you were a kid, and that's what builds that safety. So um, it's just allowing men to be human instead of robots, or lizards, whatever. And
Mhm.
that's quite. We got to go real slow with that.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that because that is the deep stuff. And
Mhm.
most men, I mean, I don't even say just men. I mean, most people, if they start to feel uncomfortable, they want to avoid that at all costs. They want to stay in their comfort zone.
Mhm.
And facing, looking in deep, that's the hard work, but there is so much light on the other side of it once you can face that demon, face that inner child, show them the love that they didn't receive, whatever that is. Once you have done that, you have done that, and you have learned this valuable tool if you need to do it again
Mhm.
or to help someone else do it.
Mhm. Amen. Yeah, it's not like this. It's like so much possibility opens up. We don't have to just be this black or white thing that's static and never changes and has to please everyone. Um, but it takes some work to get under that and see that. And you know, in those moments when I was vulnerable, I didn't know what to do. I didn't have the resources, but being in that safe environment where I could express myself and put that out there, I got the information back from safe people that allowed me to see things more clearly, to see that there are options, and to build that safety and that trust that I can get help too. That's okay to ask for help. I
Yeah.
think men, we're lone wolf a lot of times.
Yeah, for sure. You don't want to tell your friends. You obviously can't tell your family. So who can you tell? And so,
It's a
yeah, that's another.
lonely place to be, and especially when you start expressing yourself and sharing things that are uncomfortable, that's going to make some people uncomfortable. It's a lonely journey. There's going to be a weeding of friends and family at some point, maybe boundaries or completely cutting people out that don't feel safe. And so there may be a period of time and where you're moving away from things, but ultimately that's when your people start showing up as well.
Yep. I can say 100% that was what happened for me as well. So I think once we do that and we're working with, like I said, like-minded people, other people who are on the same journey, other people who are doing the work, we see that we're all there, we're all doing it. But this stuff wasn't taught to us in school, certainly wasn't taught to us at home. So, now we have to remember that we have to give ourselves permission and know that we can make changes in our lives, that we are not stuck in that stagnant stuck of who we were, or who we thought we were, or who we thought we should be.
Mhm.
And
Yeah, I think
that's
that
probably my
first step,
favorite part of it.
but yeah, definitely, and it all just goes back to awareness and a desire to learn about yourself and educate yourself and do something different. When you do things different, you get different outcomes.
Yeah, I did a podcast that I was a guest on a couple of weeks ago with a gentleman out of Washington, D.C. And, he was great because, of course, he was spotlighting me and what I do and working with women. And he says, we were talking about how when he became a father, that was this major shift for him. And he says, what kind of advice do you have for me as a father, um, for having a daughter? Because it's so different. And so I was telling him, well, one, for me, I was a tomboy growing up. I didn't need home ec because I was born home ec. I wanted to work on cars, build things. So I took auto mechanics, wood shop, metals class, art class, anything that was hands on, physical learning. I wanted to know how to fix my own dirt bike and all that kind of stuff. I didn't care about sewing and cooking. Like I could do that stuff with my eyes closed. And I said, the one thing I had was that I gave myself permission as a kid when I was looking for safety to find things that I could learn how to do so I wasn't reliant on a man, because that was my way to provide my own safety. If I could do these things, I didn't need to worry about some man trying to do these things for me who was then going to control me or beat me or whatever. Um, and then I said on the opposite side of that is please be vulnerable, with your daughter. Don't be this tough, tough man, that you were raised to be. Show her that you can have compassion and self-compassion and be vulnerable and so that was such a great conversation because of his upbringing, and he wanted to be a different person for his daughter.
Yeah, man, that's a great human trait, to want to leave it better than you found it. And again, that takes a lot of awareness to be able to look at that and see how things were, and see how you want to respond to that.
For sure. We've talked about a lot of things. I'm kind of looking over some of the things I wanted to talk about, like system regulation, nervous system dysregulation. I think for me, like I said, the biggest benefit was learning everything. Like I didn't know words like parasympathetic, sympathetic. I I didn't know what those meant. I didn't know anything about my nervous system. I didn't know that I could go from being calm to having a trigger to having anxiety to dropping down to freeze and being in overwhelm to climbing
Yep.
right back up and being in anxiety. Like, I didn't know there was like almost a picture that I could draw and see this. And
Mhm.
that helped me understand what I was feeling and
Yep.
what my body was going through. So anything that I can do to become more and more educated helps me understand not only for myself, but for others.
When you say that, I think a lot of regulation is just knowing where you're at. Are you activated right now? Are you socially engaged? Are you shut down and freeze? Are you not feeling? And that stuff is and you can be in a mixed state. You can be both activated and feeling fatigue at the same time, And that's what we do is we teach that awareness. We teach someone how to build their interoception, so their ability to um, sense and respond to what's going or respond to, because the reason I kind of hesitated there is a lot of times there's just stuff that just needs observation. It just needs to be seen. We don't need to like rush in and fix something, right? And I'll also say, what's the chart where it's like, what you think you know and what you don't even know that you don't know. That's where working with a professional is good. I mean, um, the stuff that I teach, I think we both did a lot of at-home study and application, and that is fantastic. I'm all about, building capacity to regulate and working on safety, but there is so much that we don't know that someone who's been there, and it's kind of a curse once you've done it, because now you see it in everyone, and so you really, when you're starting anytime, it's a lifestyle of I have these things that I do at home, like you talked about the journaling and the daily wins. I do my little time to worry, things that are going to manage us, and even like we teach neurosensory exercises for how to just relax the body and really get in and observe what's going on. But man, it is invaluable to work with a good therapist, and I'm gonna toot the horn of the somatic approach. I found that DBT, CBT, I mean that these are the journaling, the daily wins, the worrying stuff. That's all DBT, and so it has its place. It's also good, I think, to potentially understand where things came from and where this dysregulation is stemming from. But I think revisiting that and reliving that is very traumatizing. And I've learned through my therapist and my mentor that it's really more about what's going on in the body, what's going on now. What I love looking at like the different patterns, like people like the trauma response stuff. So things that we took on to make us feel safe, that we start to say, this is me. So I am anxious. I am, a perfectionist. I am a people pleaser. These aren't who we are. These are the masks that we wear to feel safe in unsafe environments. And so I like to look at that stuff and peel back those layers while and then go after the big boulders as well eventually. In the past, like I said, I wanted the big cathartic release. I wanted to go after those right away, but I think it's more about slow and steady titration, building safety, building awareness, and those big boulders are going to work their way out. They're going to come up when you feel safe. If you know they're there, it doesn't mean you want to go hunting for them. That's what I thought it was in the beginning, and that got my ass handed to me a couple of times.
Yep.
Because you
Yeah.
can be tired. That's the thing. Like nobody talks about this part of healing. It can be the most exhausting. Like healing is so exhaustive. And man, if you've just been all or nothing and running through walls. You got to learn how to rest. And that's been a big part of the journey as well for me.
Yep. Yep. I'll agree with that too. And I found that with therapy as well. Like my therapist wanted to unpack, what was causing these triggers. And it was just re-traumatizing me, re-traumatizing me, re-traumatizing me. And I did better coming at it from the opposite direction of what am I feeling right now? What tools do I have to switch from being in fight or flight to calming back down and in a state where I felt safe to then look at that stuff, not just sitting in a room like talking it out, because that would definitely cause even more triggers. And then I'd leave there and I'd feel beat. I'm just like, oh my God, I just want to crawl in bed. If I approach
And never get out of the damn bed is what
yep.
that's coming out of survival mode. That's that I can't get enough sleep. And that's like a good sign to go, hey, what we talk about is a good piece of work. It looks like I may be tired for 1, maybe 2 days. Um, I really like more that evening if I'm going to be, my own personal preference. But anything outside of that, it's too much. And that's where we start to see our real window of tolerance and our true capacity. And I'm more focused on so Irene, what it's like building capacity, and the way she talks about that, it's a really cool analogy. Is we have this swimming pool, and it's full of these beach balls, and they're bouncing around in there, and there's not a lot of space, there's not a lot of flow, there's not coherence, and so and I see those balls bouncing around as like different sensations and symptoms and activation. And like when I went to therapy, I had so much sensation I didn't know what to do with it or what was going on. And so we don't want to go in and pull the big ball out because that's like ripping out the ground floor of our home, like we were talking about earlier, and that's going to be very dysregulating. And so instead, we want to grow the pool. We want to grow the pool, the capacity to be with the intensity of those sensations that we've been avoiding. And we don't do that by throwing you in the deep end. We do that by sticking our toenail in, and then going back to a little bit of safety, pendulating back to a little bit of safety, and then tapping back into it. Now I got some more safety on board. Let me touch back into this thing, and then get back out over here. And the more capacity we grow, those beach balls, they work themselves out on their own. And when the big ones are ready, it's a layup. It's just like, oh, here it is. I didn't have to go looking for it, and I don't have to complete this right now. I can if I just touch into it, that's okay. I incorrectly at the beginning of the mentorship, I thought I made this analogy that I thought I had cracked the code, and I was like, trauma release is like riding a bull. You just got to hold on tight and get through the experience. Like, no, man, that's I see it now as more like a red, yellow, green light. So green light means I'm good to go into this. Yellow means we're starting to cook a little bit, and we probably need to rest. We need to pause. We need to orient or attune, or we need to move to a resource that helps us calm down. And maybe that's enough for today because that's what I was doing for a while is just like, give me more, give me more, give me more. And I'd be so exhausted for, months at a time and feel like I'm going backwards because that overachiever in me like couldn't stop. And so learning the yellow and the red light was such a big part of this because I could say, I think I need to slow down or let's pause right here. Or that's enough. And it's like, how do you know? Well, I know because it feels like I'm in the gym and I don't want to do another rep. Like fucking fantastic, right? Like that's what we're talking about. That is listening to your body, and
Yep.
we are done for today. And that's how you save yourself from being wiped out for weeks versus like doing a good piece of work.
Yeah. I agree. And it took a while to kind of learn that. And I've learned that even like with my relationship, with my marriage, like being able to communicate. Are you good? Do we need to talk some more? Where are you at?
I need to take a break before we have this conversation. That's what I'm working on because I have like the way my nervous system looks from like a somatic, it's called a global high. So I've just got like a high activated system and working on bringing it down. And so that means my emotions can go from 0 to 100 real quick. And so I can be in that reaction, old pattern of reaction really quick. And that's what we're doing is we're building that interoception. So if we really slow it down, it's like my partner just said something, boom, there's this activation. And so instead of like taking the ride and following the activation, we can hold that, contain that, and say like, woo, man, I'm pissed off right now. That really got me. And if I can put that pause in there and I can say, let me come back to this in a little bit, that got me. That's regulation. That's not avoiding it. It's not saying it's not storming off. And you got that's how I got my wife interested in doing this stuff is she would say like, wow, you have went from blowing up and storming off to calmly telling me what you're feeling and what you need and being able to communicate better. And she's like, I don't know what's going on with me whenever I'm upset, and I want to be able to communicate. And it's learning to use your venom like a little baby snake. You can dump too much in the beginning, but that's what a good relationship is built on is communication, and you can't do that without being able to sense your body and have those conversations and say like, this is what I need, this is what's going on. And a good partner is going to respond and grow the relationship in that way.
We'll have to come back to that topic of conversation off camera. Information for you.
Yeah.
I would love to know, because this is where I used to, when we were talking off camera, how when I first launched my practice and even my podcast, I was working with both men and women. I have pretty much switched at least my coaching practice to only focusing on women, although I still have some couples that I'm working on. How do you handle, or how do you work with your clients on that resistance? And I see it much more for men than women. Like we can only get so far, and the men completely shut down for me. I had a couple that had purchased, a large package of couple sessions, and at the end of the second session, he shut down and he was out. He's like, nope, you can deal with my wife. He couldn't have those deep conversations. How do you work through that wall? Do you have any advice?
I don't know. Resistance is going to come up in any healing journey, and it's something to recognize and to work with. And the first thing I think about, well, number one is this person ready? And I used to, man, I'm evangelical and quite the drum beater for this mental health stuff. And even going back to my wife, I'll give that example. I told her like I want to do this together. I want to grow together. I see I've been doing this work, and now I see these patterns, and there's some things that I've seen you do, and I want to grow together and do this together. And she said, "You're offending me." And I was like, "Oh my God!" Like that wasn't my intention. I called one of my buddies and I said like, hey man, I just pissed my wife off by telling her I wanted to do this work with me. Like, I don't know if I can be in this relationship, and someone that's not mentally healthy. And he's like, bro, I'm going to tell you what you told me a long time ago. And I was like, oh God, here we go. And he's like, nobody does this work until they're ready. You can't force anybody to do this. And if you try to, it's going to be resentful, and they're going to do it for you, because they don't want you to punish them or leave them, or they want you to be happy. And that's reinforcing their patterns. That's saying like that's not being very unconditional in your love. And so for me, I would demonstrate to that person I would, as a man, there's a couple options there to say like, hey, can you see how your behavior or whatever is showing up is affecting your family? And a lot of times when guys can see that it's affecting other people besides them, then they'll step up and do that. Um, I think seeing other men be vulnerable and demonstrate and do the work, and seeing the benefits of that, that's ultimately what would happen in my relationship. I was never gonna, I know I can't force my wife to do anything. I'm a coach, man. Do you know how hard that conversation, I mean, how hard that can be sometimes when I just unconsciously go into coach mode? Like that is not received well, but there when the communication is there and it's not like and the question finally comes, well, that's the opportunity to share that the person is open. And so resistance is something to be aware of. If we've gotten past the they're not ready, the do it for your family, next is like we're doing way too much then. Can we titrate this a little more? Can we do a little bit less of this and see what it's like? And and it's okay if it's not right now. You know, it's I think we need to support people wherever they're at and shine that light, be the example, communicate as much as we can, but nobody's taking that horse to drink unless it wants to.
Okay, I feel better. Thank you. I realized, hearing it, I was doing all of that. And definitely recently had the same conversation about you can't help somebody who isn't ready. And so I used, my situation. I quit smoking cigarettes in 2009 when I got into this marriage. My husband was a smoker. And at no time did I come in and be like, oh, you need to quit or this isn't going to happen. He would try to quit. It wouldn't work. I would support him. I would say, you're just not ready. When you are ready, 100% ready, nothing is going to stand in your way. And that's, for me, I'm very much, I can make a line in the sand and say, when I hit that line, before I step over, I'm ready to step over that line. When I quit smoking, it was the cost of cigarettes. When it hits this dollar amount, I'm going to quit because I couldn't afford to smoke cigarettes and drive a Suburban into town 50 miles every day. And it was like, well, I need to drive my car to get to work, but I don't need my cigarettes to get me to work. So yeah. I'm able to make those things. I can draw a line and be like, just like my job. Okay. Like I finally was like, okay, I've got to quit for myself. And I told him the same thing. I said, when you are ready, nothing will stand in your way, no matter how much you tell yourself you don't want to quit because you like it. Because I remember saying that. I remember telling my friends, I'll never quit smoking. I like it too much. Same with smoking weed. Like I loved it. I'd been doing it for so long as a coping mechanism. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to quit. Mm-hmm. So when he was ready to quit smoking cigarettes, I said, all right, I'll quit smoking weed. Let's do this together because it was a shared experience. So we'd get home from work and it was great. He didn't smoke in the house. So we'd go outside and he'd smoke a cigarette. I'd smoke a bowl. We'd be cool. We'd come back inside. So we were supporting each other in this shared experience. I wanted to support each other in the shared experience of quitting together. And now I'm like, man, we never go outside. Thank God it's grilling season because now we get to go outside again.
Yeah. Well, it's something to add to that too that I'm thinking about. I came from health coaching, right? And I really had to change my tune because it was a lot of the way we're treated when we're young is how we treat ourselves and likely other people. And so, in my coaching, it's my way or the highway, and you're going to do it this way, and this is my way, and don't ask any questions, and like if you're not doing the work, then you're gone. You can't be representing of me out in the public if you're eating, let's just say junk food and drinking a bunch of beer on the weekend, and that's ridiculous, now when I'm working with people, I meet people where they're at. I don't do sequential things. There is no plan. It's where are you at now? What's going on? And what is the low hanging fruit? What is the least resistant thing that we can approach? You're going to tell me that in our conversations. And even as I've started, so I've gotten away from a plan and how to tell people what to eat and how to move and all that stuff. And I'm excited to share this nervous system stuff. And people find me for various reasons. Some for health coaching, some more the nervous system stuff. And I get real excited to share the nervous system stuff. And when people don't have an education or a background or even awareness of that at all, it's kind of like what's a good term, like trying to put a circle through a square. It's just awkward. It isn't working, and they're not getting it. And so there's no reason for me to be in that territory. I can do so. What I do in those situations is I am constantly infusing body awareness and teaching them to listen to their body without even touching the deeper stuff. And when they're ready, they know who to ask. Like they see my stuff, and or we'll have they come. They'll answer a question differently, and the door opens. But you cannot bust through that door because all your rapport, your connection, your safety that you have with that person is gone because you just violated it because you're saying, "Hey, you got to do it my way." I was thinking about a girl that this morning, actually, that when I first started doing this work, and she wanted to eat a vegetarian diet or a vegan diet, and I was like, "Hell no," because I don't agree with that. And I was even thinking, like, how can I reach back out to this girl and be like, "Hey, I'll give you some free coaching," because she was a great teacher for me because we ended up not, I just couldn't handle that. And now who am I to tell you what you need and want? And like, and who am I to attach my identity to that or force you to do something? It's literally me doing what traumatized me. Instead of supporting someone with where they're at and helping them work through that when they need some help. Um, but we're all learning and growing and developing and we're doing the best we can. I think everybody's doing the best they can with the resources, the information they have, and I think that's a better way to show up for people when it comes to coaching. It's like you don't have to go into the nervous system or mindset or look in your dark closet that you've never looked. Like maybe you need to just learn how to eat some really nutrient dense food and not starve yourself and punish yourself or do this diet mentality or hard workout stuff. Like I got several clients that's all we're working on is how do we find what foods are good for our body. But the result of that is, oh wow, how much safety did I bring on by, man, I got these foods that I can count on. I've learned how to cook. I can take care of myself, kind of like you were talking about,
Mhm.
with the men in your life. And so, man, I'm feeling more energy. I'm sleeping better. Like what else can we do? And it's like,
Yep.
there's a lot. It's a rabbit hole. It's so big, and I feel like that's what people need, not some drill sergeant.
Yep. Just leave those doors open. Yeah, even coaching, I think they taught us, I don't know, 50 different diet options so that you're aware, you understand where that person's coming from. But that's not where your center of focus is. It's like you said, it's starting with those other habits, those other small changes, one step at a time, and listening to your body and seeing how you feel better. And I even went through that myself when I was ending my previous marriage. I threw myself into fitness, just like you said, like 100%, both feet in. I was at the gym like 4 hours a day. I was on a strict diet, counting every calorie versus every, uh, calorie burn, did calories in, calories out, watching my micronutrients, my macronutrients. I was like 1,000% in.
You're dialed in.
But I was doing all of it to escape my marriage. And because in the back of my head, I thought if I was different, if I looked different, he would love me more. And so I was running away from something while I was running to something.
Yeah, we
And
we think we fix ourselves. it'll fix the situation.
Yeah. And the big reality was, one, I was the healthiest I had ever been, at least to some degree. Like I weighed
Right.
the least I had ever lived. I was eating vegetables that I had never ever ate before, was falling in love with it, was falling in love with nutrition and helping others. But I was doing it all for the wrong reasons. And it was just like yoga. I learned how to do yoga and I loved yoga, but I never connected it to my spirituality or to breath work. It was
Hmm.
just go in a room and do yoga for an hour.
Until you hurt somebody because you're competing with the person beside you and you miss the whole meaning of what yoga is. It's like with Irene's work, she teaches body awareness so that you can respond, so that you can be aware of what your body's communicating to you. And so that is the glue that fuses all of this stuff together because you can be in that class and you can go, not me. Instead of going like, oh wait, hold on, I gotta beat this. Now I've hurt myself. Same thing in the gym. We're just watching the trainer and completely disconnected from our body, and that's how we get injured and hurt. The exact situation you're describing, I was jacked to the teeth, looked great, wasn't sleeping more than 4 hours a night. Every joint hurt so bad. Like what's the word? When you're obsessed with your health, I can't remember the name of it, but it's like just an obsession with like eating perfect. I'm still undoing that stuff.
Yep.
And
My
these
nutritionist is
adjustments that,
working with me on that as well.
yeah, good. Yeah, it's like have some freaking pizza. Get you a beer if you want it. Good Lord. Like it's not going to kill you.
I
But,
lost
but
friends. I lost friends through that point in my life because they're like, we're not even going to come down and visit with you because you're no fun to be with. You can't even go out to eat, or you're standing there looking at the menu on your phone trying to figure out how many calories are in that slice of pizza at Dion's. And you're like, no, I guess I'm going to have a salad and people just quit. They were like, you're a different person. And it wasn't that that they didn't want to be with me because I was just different. Like,
trying to control yourself. You're trying to like be perfect to please someone else and not meanwhile you're abandoning yourself and the people that love you because you're pushing them out and creating this box for where the only place you can move or feel comfortable in.
yeah, so my nutritionist don't let me do that anymore.
What's your nutrition look like now?
It's much better. It's much more listening to my body, and yeah, it's much better. And my sleep, oh my goodness, I went from, like you said, like 4 hours of sleep max to now I'm averaging 10 to 11.
Don't even bring that to me. I'm still that's the one that's the one thing I have not conquered. I've had moments, periods of time where I've slept really good. This recent thing kind of threw me off a little bit. And a big part of that for me is trusting that I'm going to be okay, that my body will get back to equilibrium, um, and that I don't have to force it or fix it to get there.
Yeah, I don't know. It's been a pretty major shift, but yeah, I went from
And
literally 3 or 4 hours to, first it was like 7, then it was 8, then 9, 10 or
you'll let my wife, she
11.
sleeps 10 or 11 hours a night, man. I'm gonna say it here in public. Like that is a big goal for me, and that's a milestone that's gonna happen before too long. I know it. I mean, I've had periods where I've slept really good, and then like, something that's the whole thing. Like we're contracting or we're expanding. And so if you're in an expansion, that's the times that I've slept really good. Some big stressors come in, they come in so slow and they accumulate. Maybe they happen all at once. Like we just moved. I made a mistake on my hormone stuff, which threw things really off for months. And growing a business, doing this mentorship, all these things, and if you're not really aware, you can't see that. Oh, my system went into a contraction. A lot of these patterns came back. I've dug out of this hole before. I think number one is just knowing that you're okay, that there's no need to add that second fear. that these are just thoughts and sensations and emotions. And the more you can just relax your body into it and show up for yourself and work with a therapist and do some work there, you're going to be fine. It's going to work out. That's
Yeah.
what I'm telling myself.
I'm watching the clock. I know you said you got to get back on a call at 3. We're almost at 2 your
Yep.
time, correct?
Yep. Yeah, I probably got like 5 or 10.
Perfect. So let's real quick. So if someone here is that's listening, and I'm sure people who have already started listening to this, they're in that position where they're kind of stuck in survival mode, fatigued, anxious, disconnected. What would be one first step that you would recommend with their body to begin that healing journey?
With their body, I mean, I think first is always awareness and saying like asking for help, being vulnerable. I think that goes along with our conversation. But a tool. So you're asking for a tool of
Yes,
how we
cool.
connect with the body or regulate build capacity in the nervous system. Yeah. So mine would be orienting. And real quick to explain that, I'm going to just go through what that is and give
Okay,
a tool.
please.
We can do that here on the call if you want to do it for a minute or something like that.
Mhm.
But yeah, there's two types of orienting. There's defensive orienting, and everybody knows what that is. You're not paying attention in a baseball game. Ball gets hit in your direction. What do? I'm throwing my hands up. You defend yourself, right? When we've had trauma, that what's the word I'm looking for? That threat did not get completed. It got stored in our body. So meaning completion would be I knock the ball out of the sky or I catch it, right? Completed. Now say we did that defensive move and we have a bunch of dysregulation. Well, we may be under threat and feel like we're under attack the next day, right? And so if we've had trauma, we often defensively orient consciously or more likely unconsciously. That's anxiety, that's insomnia all the time. And so if hypervigilance, that's what that is. The world is a scary place and it's out to get me. And so there's also exploratory orienting, which is, oh wow, look at this beautiful scenery. I got a window right here looking at my door, and I'm looking at the springtime and the green and the trees and the grass. And so I'm taking my attention off of what I might be focusing on is my symptoms, my sensations. Is something bad going to happen? And so I'm just going to find something that interests me and really look at it and just let my attention go on the external. So that's something that we can do. You can, orienting comes in all different forms, all the senses. And so you can orient to your butt in the chair. You can orient to what's supporting my back right now. You could orient with, that's kinesthetic, that's feeling. We can do it with auditory. So everybody that's listening, you know, what do you hear in your room right now? Is there one or two sounds that you can pick out? And then can you stay connected with your butt in the chair and look around and see the four walls that are around you or the environment that you're in? Can you get interested in your hand and like just look at it? I mean, right now, look at your hand. And when you're a child, you may look at your hand for the first time and you're like, what the hell is this thing? You know, do that again. See if you can find something on your hand that you haven't seen in a while. I got this pin mark on my hand from holding this pen. I had no idea. And I'm looking at it, and it's two little dots, and they're blue. And that's interesting, right? Is there a color in the room that you're around? So you're just using these senses to bring us into the now. Because when we're in trauma, we're thinking about some terrible situation and trying to prevent it from happening. Or, yeah, we're thinking the worst possible scenario so that we can prepare for it to avoid it. And so that is all past and future, and you're missing here. And here is where we can pay attention to our breath, feel our butt, feel our feet on the ground, notice the environment that we're in. And pretty soon, when we do that, it builds safety. It starts to bring down that activation, and we're realizing that there's not a tiger at the door, like we were talking about earlier. So orienting is one of the first things that we teach, and it built that capacity to feel and orient to your body is how we build that interoception so that we know what's going on. That's how the next step in that may be, damn, I don't like being around this person, or, doing this thing makes me not feel good. Maybe I shouldn't do that anymore, where maybe we're doing out of habit because we feel like we have to. Um, so now we're listening with our body, and that orienting, it builds out from there. It's layers and layers from just one little thing of, can you feel your butt in the chair? Can you feel your back against the chair? Can you look around and see what's going on in the room around you? It's that simple. It seems a lot of the stuff is so simple. I think we make it so damn difficult, and that's where the education piece comes in. It's so important.
Agreed. Agreed. In fact, I learned, I work with people more like on the go outside, take a walk in your neighborhood. Let's identify 5 things that are yellow. Let's identify, use all those senses,
Yeah.
smell,
One of
taste.
my favorites is combining exactly what you're talking. Think about nature, right? So if you want to get into like my biohacking side, I we know about nature bathing and what it does for cortisol. Just being in nature, what it does for cortisol. It's amazing. We know about grounding. So I'm not saying go be barefoot and get weird looks everywhere.
That's
There's a
what I
grounding
do.
strap. There's grounding straps that you can put on the outside of your shoe and tuck into your shoe, and now you're connected to the earth. That's going to create circulation, going to be good for the hormones, lowering cortisol. So now I'm moving. That's going to be good. I'm in nature, lowering cortisol. I'm grounding, and so now I'm going to use my senses. This is called like multitasking awareness through orienting. I'm going to combine them. I'm going to feel my feet on the ground. I'm going to smell what it smells like. I'm going to look at all the different pretty things. And it's really, here's a thing that even yesterday we were talking about is like connecting with it, going into the luxury of that experience and allowing your body to be connected with that. And a good example of that would be like, I can if we have a sensitized nervous system, we can wake up with activation. That's a normal thing,
Yep.
right? And so that can be quite alarming. And so if you're sitting there like, oh yeah, we'll orient when you wake up. Okay. So now I'm just laying there terrified, like trying to look at something. And that's going to be where everybody starts. But can I take in the luxury of this comfortable bed that I'm laying in? And like, my bed, I've got a chili pad and it's got a cold spots. And so I'll find the cold spots and I'm like, oh God. And so we're not focused on this like shitty situation that's going on that's not going to hurt us. It's just our body is reacting like a sensitized nervous system is going to. And so we have to not be fearful of that. And then what kind of resource can we give ourselves to help settle? And in this case, it's orienting, and it's really wallowing in it, like really soaking up the experience. We were at the in the Florida Keys last week, and it's like, damn, I got my toes in the sand. I got the sun on my body. The wind is hitting me. These waves are coming in. I got a cocktail in my hand, like listening to music. My wife's beside me, like, damn, does it get any better than this? And so you can give your body all of that. You can also be in that environment and jumping out of your freaking skin because you're reliving an old past experience. I will say this, like, traveling is something that was scary for me for a while. And so we're in that scenario, and my diaphragm's getting tight, my chest is getting tight. There's all this fear coming up, and I know where that's coming from, and I know what's going on. And I can also swing my attention back to this resource that is like all the good things that I know in life. And so um, that is how that's a long explanation of how we can orient and then go into it. It's not just staring at the walls. It's like, what do you like about the wall? You know?
Yep. Yeah. I guess for me, it's definitely the grounding. So, people will ask me, so what do you do when you're not coaching or doing a podcast episode or whatever, it's like you can find me outside barefoot in my grass with my hands in the dirt, talking to my plants, going down to the river, visiting my favorite tree, hugging my tree, sitting there, listening to the water and the birds and all of those things. And gratitude. So that waking up, like you said, waking up and orienting, for me, it's waking up and practicing gratitude. I've got a grounding sheet on my bed, but I get to lay there and not jump out of bed at an alarm clock and have to be somewhere at a certain time. The benefit of being a business owner is I choose when my day starts. That's where my calendar is open to everybody else in the world. But for me, I get my time to lay there, find that cool spot, practice some gratitude, be thankful for the bed that I have, that I share with my husband, for the roof over my head, that I can hear the birds chirping at 6 a.m., whether I want to choke the bird or not. I'm like,
sometimes I want to choke the bird. Yeah, I get it.
I often have to be like, oh my goodness, I can tell exactly when it's 6 a.m. because at 6 a.m. on the dot, the birds start chirping. And I'm like, the birds are chirping. It's beautiful. And I can open the doors and walk outside. And yesterday I saw, another sign of spring, my first hummingbird. And, it's just like, just take time for those beautiful things. And I was doing a somatic class, and that was one of the things she really focused on. And we did it as kind of a thing during class was, looking out a window in front of me and seeing the wind blow and move that leaf and watching that leaf and just being like, man, the wind is blowing. It's beautiful. It's spring here in New Mexico. The wind is blowing. It's going to end. The next season's coming. Just picking that spot in the distance. Or I'm blessed that, I moved my business to working from home, and the room I work in is my favorite room in the house. So I am constantly surrounded by what brings me joy.
That's it.
That's it. That's my orienting, to help me if I start feeling anxious or whatever. I know I can always get up from my chair, go walk outside, kick off my shoes, walk around in the grass, talk to a plant, come back inside, talk to the plants in the house, and, turn on the music, turn it up a little louder, clean. I'm one of those weird folks. I love to clean, but I'm in my happy space. And what I'm doing with intent. I'm cleaning this space that I share with my partner. And life is sweet. Or I can live in a home that's a mess and out of control and stuff everywhere and constantly be surrounded by chaos. Or I can live in a space that brings me joy. So that's my favorite part of every day, is that I get to choose my happiness. And that's where my happiness on tap came from. I get to choose my happiness.
I love it. Thank you for sharing that. That's awesome.
So we'll get you going. We definitely will, I don't know, maybe schedule another one soon, get you back on here. But, Mitch, your work is inspiring. Your story is amazing and inspiring. How can people connect with you and learn more about your services, so I can make sure and get all that information in the show notes?
Yeah, I appreciate that. My website is mitchwebb.com. You can find me on there. On Instagram, I'm K Mitch Webb. I'm on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. Starting a YouTube page and a podcast to be announced soon. So be looking for that. But yeah, I'm always available on social media or on the website.
Great. I will get all of that information in the show notes. We're going to close this up so you can get to your call. Those are always important. What a powerful, heartfelt conversation. I appreciate you so much. Your story is such a beautiful reminder that true healing doesn't come from pushing harder or looking for the external, but from slowing down and tuning in and allowing ourselves to feel. vulnerability and nervous system regulation, and redefining what it means to be strong, are really game-changing truths for anyone and everyone who is ready to step out of survival mode and into a life of vitality. And to my listeners, if this resonated with you, I encourage you to find Mitch, follow Mitch, dive deeper into your nervous system healing with all of the wonderful people out there that are there to help us do that in a safe space and provide that safe container for us to do that. Please share this episode with a friend or family member who needs to hear this. And until next time, keep choosing joy, keep choosing healing, and keep your happiness on tap. Thank you so much, Mitch.
Thank you, Leanne. I appreciate the opportunity. It's great chatting with you.
You as well.